Whether you think you can or you think you can't. You're right. We're going to talk about it on today's podcast.
I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life.
What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast. I'm glad you joined me today because we're going to talk about Henry Ford's well-known quote, and it's generally said now, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I want to talk a little bit about why that is, that it is true. And really just get into the idea here behind why that works. And many of you may or may not have heard of the law of attraction. If you've listened to this podcast, we've discussed it in and out. And the concept is simple, right? You attract like attracts like. You attract those things that are similar, and you can see it. I mean, there's obvious stuff like, you know, the basketball players hang out with the basketball players because they like to talk about basketball. The ducks hang out with the ducks because they're other ducks. And so we see this in really simplistic forms all over and in our world. And the interesting thing about the law of attraction and this particular quote, right, this idea of whether you think you're right or you think you're wrong, or whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. And it's because what starts going on in your mind starts to influence your thoughts and your actions. And this is a huge portion of what it is that's happening, right? It's not so much that there's some magical force, right? So you don't have to think about it in terms of some mystical, magical force going on. It's pretty simple. You start thinking about it positively or negatively. And of course, positive and negative are relative. But you start thinking about that, and what you do is you tend to start attracting more of that. And so you've noticed, I call it the the Ford F-150 effect. My daughter gets mad at me because I pointed it out to her once, but I just started pointing out all of the Ford F-150s, and there's a lot of them on the road right now. It's a popular truck. And I started pointing out the Ford F-150. Hey, look, there's a Ford F-150. Hey, look, there's a Ford F-150. And inevitably, you do that for one time driving in the car. And the next thing you know, if you have attached it to something funny or, you know, you point it out, next thing you know, you'll start noticing the Ford F-150s everywhere. And it's the same thing when you get a new car or you get a new item in your world. You start to notice that item everywhere. For me, it happened when the Honda Ridgeline truck came out. I was one of the first people to get it the year it came out, and I thought I was like right off the bat, like I was going to be the first one to get it. And truthfully, the minute I drove off the lot, I literally saw 5 of them that day as I drove home. And I thought, gosh, I thought I was the only one, you know, or the first one to get it. And really, truthfully, what happened was my eyes were now open to it because I was in sync with this truck. I had now put it in my perspective. I had put it in my vision. Now, that's just one element of it. The other element is belief. And when you start talking about belief, you start talking about a set of thoughts that you keep thinking over and over and over again. and they become something that's normal and easy for you to see and for you to perceive. And so when you are in that phase or that place of belief, now all of a sudden you start to see things that match up. And so that's how those two things are connected, right? As I start to believe that there are tons of Ford F-150s out there, I will start to see it everywhere. You start to see this truck everywhere. You start to notice, hey, that's a Ford F-150. Hey, they have a Ford F-150. Hey, look, that comes in red. It comes in black. It comes in blue. Oh, I've not seen one with the raised tires and the raised truck and these huge tires. Oh, I've not seen one that's a F-250. That's huge. Oh, it's a, that's a red one. Oh, that's a blue one. And you start to see it everywhere. In fact, if you're listening to this in your car, I bet you anything within the time that you listen to this podcast, you will at least see one or two of them. They'll be out there, right? Because we started to put your attention to it. The same thing happens when you start to think about things, whether you're right or whether you're wrong, whether you think you're right or whether you think you're wrong. You'll start to notice it and you'll find evidence for it, because the mind is really good at finding evidence for the things that you're thinking about. And so if I start thinking of the color black, I will start to find everything that is the color black, like the microphone, like the logo behind me, like the words on my shirts, like whatever's around you. Maybe the car seats are black. Maybe you're wearing black. You will start to notice black everywhere because you started to think of it. And so when you start to think of this quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, if you start to get in the mode of you think you can't do this or you think you can't accomplish this thing, you'll start noticing and finding the evidence for the fact that you can't. If you start to think about whatever it is you're trying to do and you start to think, yes, I can do that, you will also start to find evidence for why you can. Now, I'd like to turn this around just a little bit, because it's always a great place to go back to and say, okay, let's look at things like when we're in a funk. You have heard all the time when people get out of the bed on the wrong side of the bed, right? You hear that, or you might have even said that to somebody, hey, did you get out of the wrong side of the bed? As if there was a right side. But I mean, I get out of the same side of the bed every morning, but that's an old term, an old phrase. Hey, did you get out of the wrong side of the bed today? Meaning that you seem to be in a grumpy attitude or a grumpy mode, or things have been going poorly. And you might hear somebody say, well, yeah, I stubbed my toe when I got out of bed, and then I knocked my glass of water over and it got everything wet. And then after that happened, I bonked my teeth with my toothbrush and I chipped my tooth, and then everything just kept getting worse from there. And some people think that it's essentially just because, oh, I just had a bad day. Well, actually, a lot of it is you. Sorry to tell you, responsibility, right? And I like that word hyphenated, responsibility. And so when you start to think about this responsibility, right, the ability to respond, what happens is you start to notice a negative thing. And because of that, you'll notice the next negative thing. And because of that, you start noticing more and more of the negative things. And so it can start to tumble and snowball downhill really rapidly. Likewise, if you can snowball the downhill for the positive things, that's also good. This is why it's highly recommended by so many successful people to first thing in the morning start to get in the right state of mind. Get it to the point where you have it practiced and rehearsed and ready to go, that when you first wake up, you have a morning routine that gets you going in the right direction. One of the first things you can do is have something ready and set. Maybe like affirmations, or if you like to do some meditation is really great. Now, what does that mean? It could be something as simple as just focusing in on a thing. Now, what thing would be good? Well, appreciation is really great. Gratitude can actually be one of the most powerful things, because if the first thing that you do when you have woken up and you are resetting for that next day, because while you sleep, you reset, gives your mind a chance to shut off and chill out. And so when you start your day and you reset, and the first thing you start to think about, those first few things you start to think about, is gratitude. And it could be small or large. It could be really anything. But when you can get into that gratitude mode and start running with it, you'll start to notice more gratitude. When you start to think about that and it gets you moving, now that will influence more of your day. So what I would highly recommend and highly suggest for you is that you come up with that morning routine. And if you have a hard time thinking of that straight away because you're groggy, have it set on your phone to open so that you can see, okay, these are the things that I'm grateful for. And you could even have written it out. Maybe the night before when you go to bed, you go, okay, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that, I'm grateful for this, and just write it down. It doesn't have to be huge. Doesn't have to be this big ordeal. You can just write down like 5 or 10 things that you're grateful for right before you go to sleep, and then open that up, open the notes app on your phone and look at it right off the bat in the morning. And you could start with something as simple as that. Now, lots of people have long meditation routines. Sometimes they go longer than 15 minutes, or they'll go into an hour, or whatever they do, right? And you can develop your own personal morning routine as you go. But the point is that in order to get the ball rolling, in order for you to start to notice the Ford F-150s, you start to notice things that you're grateful for, and you start to realize the things that you're blessed to have in your world, the emotions you're blessed to experience, the things that are going well. And it will get easier and easier to start to recognize those things around you. Even when things seem like some other people in your world might indicate that things are going poorly, you'll be able to be that one that goes, yeah, but, right? And this is a great use for the word but. Yeah, but, things could be actually a little worse. So this is actually going okay, and being able to find that gratitude for different things in your world is super, super valuable. So whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And so you have to lean towards the can as often as you can, whether you realize it or not. Now you do. Now you realize that every time things are starting to go a little bit negative, you are focusing on it and you are starting to actually recognize it more and more. And so you can actually make a choice to start to recognize some of the positive and start to realize that, things are more possible than you maybe can easily get into the mindset of if you start to get negative. And so that's what I challenge you to do today, is start to think of some of the positive things. If you're having a bad day, you can always come back and listen to this episode on your bad days, right? And you can get back in and go, yeah, I can be response-able. I can start to think of some of the things I'm grateful for. It's a really great bridge. So if your day's going poorly, you can start to think of things you're grateful for and hopefully start to bridge it back to the positive. And that's what we really want to shoot for, so that we can be more response-able. Anyway, if you know somebody that needs to hear this episode because it will rock their world or change their life, please share it with them. Give us a shout out, a hashtag Majic for Life on the Instagrams. And if you want to share this on Facebook or wherever you would share your podcasts, we'd love the referral, and we'd love to get out and help as many people as we can. And of course, as usual, if you're watching on YouTube or iTunes or wherever you're listening or watching, please give us a like or subscribe, and tune in for the next episode. We'll see you next time.
Happiness is a choice. Sadness is a choice. All emotions are a choice. Sometimes doing our emotions doesn't seem like it's our choice, but it is. You have control. You are the captain of your ship, and you must learn how to be the best captain you can be. Let me show you how. Pick up your free copy of my new book, Every Minute, at everyminutebook.com.